Welcome back, defenders. Russia attacked Poland. NATO airspace breached. Shaheeds crossed into Poland as Russia attacks Ukraine with missiles and drones. Moscow launched a mass aerial assault on Ukraine overnight. Shaheeds crossed into Poland, forcing Poland to close its airspace and scramble alert fighters to intercept and engage Kremlin UAVs. Last night, the Russians launched 458 drones and missiles against Ukrainian cities. And this should be the top news story in the world. 29 people killed, 34 injured in Russian attacks last night. But this is not the top news story in the world. If all these drones and missiles stayed inside the borders of Ukraine, this would just be another Tuesday. But because some of these drones went off course, accidentally or deliberately, this is a big deal. Here's the flight path showing the direction of all these drones and missiles, and when you zoom in, I don't think this is an accident. I think Russia deliberately flew these drones into Poland as a provocation to see what would NATO, what would the United States, what would Poland do to react. What's the damage? And it's not much. The only pictures I can find is this single house. This is like a Polish farmer's house. This is what the house looked like on Google Maps before, and this is the after. Thankfully, nobody was injured or killed. Most of the other drones just crashed in open fields. We have collected some of the drones, and they're clearly Russian. These are not Ukrainian. Ukraine did not intercept and hijack or control these drones. This was, in my opinion, deliberate. Here's a map showing where all these drones were found and located. Some of these are southwest of the capital city of Warsaw. And Poland's air defenses did not perform very well. Poland shoots down 4 out of the 19 Russian drones, saying they lack the systems to counter Kremlin UAV threats. Do you spend a $2 million Patriot missile to shoot down a $20,000 Shahed drone? And perhaps Poland's air defenses made the calculations not to waste a Patriot missile? They have air defense systems. So Poland scrambled F-35s and F-16s, and they got 4 out of 19, meaning they weren't very prepared. Here is the Deputy Prime Minister of Poland. He put out this video this morning. Let me share the first minute of this video.
Last night, Poland's airspace was breached 19 times by drones manufactured in Russia. The assessment of Polish and NATO air forces is that they did not veer off course, but were deliberately targeted. The Polish Air Force, assisted by our allies from the Netherlands, Italy and Germany, shot them down. Property was damaged, but fortunately, nobody was injured. As Prime Minister Donald Tusk reminded us this morning, even though NATO is not at war, Russian aggression strikes beyond Ukraine. Here at the Foreign Ministry, we took immediate action. I communicated with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, High Representative Kaja Kallas, and OSCE Chair in Office Elina Valtonen. We thank our allies for words of solidarity and their readiness to back them with deeds. We are taking appropriate measures. First, Poland has activated NATO's Article 4, which provides for joint consultations between NATO allies, quote, whenever, in the opinion of any of them, the territorial integrity, political independence, or security of...
What is NATO's reaction? What is Poland's reaction? NATO activates Article 4, and Article 4 just means we're going to have some meetings. We're just going to get together and talk to each other, look to each other, and probably not do anything. And of course, the Kremlin is denying they violated Poland's airspace. Moscow claims there's no evidence of drones downed over Poland belonging to Russia, which is nonsense because there's Russian written all over these drones. In addition, I don't think these drones can fly over Poland without Polish SIM cards. Does use of Polish SIM cards in Russian UAVs indicate latest incursions were planned? Following the incursion of several Russian drones into Poland overnight, Wednesday's headline, the Kremlin has been preparing drone attacks on Poland since July. The accusation was based on the fact that SIM cards provided by Polish and Lithuanian operators had been detected in Russian drones brought down in Ukraine in early July. This incursion into Poland's airspace, Russia has been planning this for weeks. They deliberately did this, premeditated, wasn't an accident, and they needed Polish SIM cards to make this happen. What should be Poland's reaction, instead of just having some more meetings and putting out some tough videos? Poland should use fighter jets and air defense in collaboration with Ukraine to shut down drones over western Ukraine and say they will expand the area they're going to cover every time Russia violates that airspace. They should shut down the flow of Russian goods going through the Polish-Belarusian border. They should work with NATO to confiscate Russian assets in Belgium, and they should provide military and financial aid to Ukraine. All of these things Poland is not doing. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do anything. And it's because of the recent elections. This is the new president of Poland saying that Ukraine's accession to the EU and NATO is premature. This new Polish president is a right-winger. MAGA loves him, and he's saying that he does not support Ukraine joining the EU or NATO. He says it's premature. I don't really want to talk about the internal politics of Poland, but this guy has not been entirely supportive. I understand the Polish people are fantastic. Donald Tusk, the prime minister, is fantastic. But as a consequence of recent elections, Russia is interfering in Polish politics. They don't necessarily prefer one candidate or another, but they want division. They want internal strife. They want people within democracies arguing and fighting amongst themselves, so they can't unify to oppose Russia. Beyond that, why would Russia do this? And it's interesting because there are American forces stationed in Poland. There are thousands of American soldiers stationed in Poland, and nobody reacted. American planes did not scramble to the skies to shoot down these Russian drones. So I think part of the justification, part of the cause of Russia doing this, is to prove to Eastern Europe, the United States is not going to defend you. We can bomb you at will. In the Baltics, in Finland, in Poland, Romania, Moldova, we can kill and attack anyone we want, and the United States is not going to stop us. The United States isn't going to do anything. We own Donald Trump. Trump is our agent, so negotiate with us. Give us concessions. Stop supporting Ukraine, and maybe we'll stop, and we won't go for Poland, the Baltics, Romania, Finland next. That's the message that Putin wanted to send, I think, in this nightly attack. Here's Trump's response this morning. What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go. This man's an idiot, and he's not going to help anyone. I'm sorry as an American, but the United States military is not going to defend anyone in Europe if Russia expands this war. So Ukraine has to find a way to win on their own, and they have the winning strategy. We are watching it play out right now. Main oil pipeline reportedly blown up in Russia's Saratov Oblast. 3 explosions in 24 hours deep in Russia's heartland, destroying a gas pipeline supplying Kremlin's forces in Ukraine. These are all these pumping stations moving oil and gas through Russia's networks. And there's nothing Russia can do. There's just way too many of them, and they're too exposed, too sensitive to have air defenses or nets or whatever. So this is Ukraine's choice. Whatever pumping stations they want to blow up, they can deploy the drones and now the missiles and destroy these pumping stations. So all of the oil and gas flowing through pipelines across Russia, it's all going to eventually grind to a halt. And we're going to find out together what happens when a petrostate runs out of petrol. Gasoline becomes a scarce liquid. Ukrainian drones hit key oil stations supplying Moscow. This is becoming a common occurrence across the Russian Empire. This is a fuel crisis officially reaching the Russian-occupied territory of Abkhazia in Georgia. If you remember, the Russian military is currently occupying 20% of Georgia, Ossetia, and Abkhazia. And I told you guys, when there's gasoline shortages, the periphery of the empire is going to be exposed first. So we're seeing the gas shortages in the occupied territories, in Crimea, in the Far East, in rural Siberia, and now we have the Caucasus. This is Russian-occupied territory in Georgia. It's going to keep expanding. This is the city of Donetsk, and the gas stations are basically empty. All of the boards are zeroed out, and Russians living in this city are panicking. This is Luhansk, and when gas stations do get refueling, they're price gouging everybody. They're charging double maybe what they would charge in other parts of Russia that still have supply. But this board is reading for A95, 90 rubles per liter. If you're American, that's the equivalent of $4.12 a gallon. But that is astronomical for Russians. $4 a gallon, we've seen that in the United States before. But for a Russian, they have never seen this before. This is a record high price for gasoline in their country, and ordinary Russians can't afford this. They can't afford to drive their car anymore. The fuel lines, the rationing, it's already happening. These videos are appearing on social media every day. Let me share a little bit of this showing the gas line.
В России люди стоят в очередях за бензином по 8 часов. Да-да, вы не ослышались. 8 часов. Владивосток, Дальний Восток, Сахалин, Забайкалье. Всюду россияне уже в панике. Вы прикиньте, вот это все время, вот я сейчас еду. Это трэш. Я такого не помню очень давно.
Russians in the Far East are waiting 8 hours in gas lines for a gas ration of 10 liters per car. I don't know how the economy of that works out, because if you are idling your car for 8 hours, it seems like you would burn more than... I don't know. I don't know how anyone in Russia is coping with this. This is Moscow, and there's not been gas lines in Moscow or St. Petersburg, but the prices have increased. This is a Russian man in the city of St. Petersburg saying gasoline is currently at this gas station listed at 90 rubles per liter. 90 rubles per liter in St. Petersburg. This is not a joke. Putin is doing everything he can to prevent shortages in the core territories. He doesn't want to discomfort or inconvenience any of his core supporters, because that would weaken his rule at home. This is the winning strategy. Here's the bingo board. Ukraine has already struck 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, basically of Russia's 9 largest refineries. And it shows the distance. This one is 700 kilometers from their border, 4,400, so maybe this is in central or eastern Russia. This one's 810, 1485. But in my opinion, no refinery is too small. Ukraine has to target all of them, and I think they will. I don't think there's anything holding Ukraine back. They're eventually going to take every refinery offline, and we're going to see what happens to Russia when none of their people have gasoline to drive their trucks and cars. Beyond that, the other operation currently in play, this is a big deal. Kyiv forces destroy Russia's Podlit Nibu-M radar system in occupied Crimea. This is once again another radar system that Ukraine has successfully struck with drones. I've lost counts, but these radar systems are very sensitive and expensive. The Nibu-M is worth 60 million, and the Podlit K1 is worth 5 million. Ukraine takes out Russia's radars one by one in Crimea. Now Bayraktar drones are free to fly and kill again. This is an update video from reporting from Ukraine. They go into much more detail. I'll link this video down below about This is a really big operation currently happening to sweep and clear Kherson and Crimea and a little bit of Rostov of their radars and air defense systems. My assumption is they're going for the bridge, but they're not going to take a shot until they know they'll be successful. This could continue, I think, playing out for the next month. New Ukrainian cruise missile drones used in decapitation strike. A strike on a suspected military headquarters in Donetsk on Monday used Ukraine's new peklo cruise missile drones, according to social media reports. This is not the Flamingo. This is a different cruise missile. And I forgot about it. This is the peklo, which is Ukrainian for hell, and President Zelensky did visit this factory back in December, announcing that this new cruise missile drone would be coming soon. That was 8 months ago, so better late than never, but this is a new tool in Ukraine's arsenal to successfully strike at the Russians. So what did Ukraine hit? And this was some kind of factory in Donetsk, and Ukraine had the intelligence that Russian officers were gathering in one location. We don't know what the casualties are. We'll maybe get some reports in a couple days how many of these Russian officers were in this factory. But it was a successful strike, and this is fantastic news. Russia wasn't able to intercept the drone, and the drone did hit its target in Donetsk. This is interesting, but the Iskander missile that struck the government headquarters building in Kyiv, the warhead failed to detonate. A Russian Iskander-K cruise missile, not a Shahed drone, hit Ukraine's cabinet building in Kyiv. Its 450-kilogram warhead failed to detonate. This is the cabinet of ministers building. Russia deliberately struck the prime minister's office. And I assumed it was a drone because this isn't a lot of damage. But we now know this was an Iskander ballistic missile, and it failed to detonate. It still made impact. It still destroyed some stuff and caused a fire, but the main warhead did not detonate, thankfully. This is Katerina Madernova. She's the EU ambassador to Ukraine. This is what she says. I saw it with my eyes. Putin knew what he was doing. The Iskander that hit the cabinet of ministers building struck at the heart of Ukraine's government. Allies must step up, more pressure on Russia, more air defenses for Ukraine. I don't want to talk about this story, guys. I watched the video and it's absolutely horrifying. Russian airstrike targets civilians in Urova, killing 24. Urova is located right here on the map. It's southeast of Izium and northwest of Liman. And these were pensioners lined up outside to collect something. Just elderly people, seniors, and Russia deliberately targeted and killed them. There is a video, I'll link it down below if you want to see the bodies of just elderly people being ripped apart. But this is what Zelensky has to say. A brutally savage Russian airstrike with an aerial bomb on the rural settlement of Urova in Donetsk, directly on people, ordinary citizens, at the very moment when pensions were being dispersed. According to preliminary information, more than 20 people were killed. There are no words. My condolences to all the families and loved ones of the victims. This was not an accident. Russia deliberately targeted these seniors. Here's Darth Putin spelling it out. We didn't just kill 20 pensioners waiting in a queue in Donetsk. We figured out where they would be waiting. We figured out when they would be waiting. We sent targeting info to our Air Force, and the pilot planned his mission and dropped his bomb. We did it because you permit it. There's almost no mention of this story in international news. When 20 people were just murdered in a terrorist attack by the Russian military. Additionally, a hospital in Konstantinivka was destroyed. Russia bombed and destroyed the 5th hospital in Konstantinivka. Here's a journalist on the ground from the hospital.
Костянтинівка. 5-ї лікарні більше немає. Величезна вирва і одного блоку немає. Скільки життів тут лікарів рятували, я навіть вже і не згадаю. Ми привозили сюди людей з Часів Яру, з Костянтинівки, поранених. Тепер вже все, вона закрилась і остаточно її знищили. Костянтинівка просто жесть, перетворюється в суцільні руїни.
This hospital saved a lot of lives before the Russians finally destroyed it. Let's get to the political news, and it only gets dumber. Trump is ready to match EU tariffs on China and India to pressure Putin. So rather than doing the things that will actually help Ukraine, provide military aid, and sanction Russian banks and businesses, Trump wants the European Union to place 100% tariffs on India and China. This is stupid. So Europe has to increase sales tax on imports for themselves to put pressure on India and China, to put pressure on Russia to stop this war. That's how stupid tariffs are. They don't do anything, aside from make things more expensive for people in your own country. Trump is not taking this serious. He has no plan. He's just wasting time. This is his latest strategy to blame Europe. Because if Europe doesn't agree to place 100% tariffs on Chinese and Indian imports, then he'll just say it's Europe's fault that this war continues, rather than actually sanctioning anyone in Russia. He's just looking for someone else to blame. Trump administration ends Biden-era anti-disinformation pact with European allies. The Trump administration has pulled the United States out of agreements with 22 European and African countries designed to combat disinformation from Russia, China, and Iran. He's doing this because he wants to do it. He wants to spread disinformation and propaganda to destabilize the governments of Greenland, Panama, Canada, Venezuela, and then send in the US military. What Russia is doing is what China wants to do and what Trump wants to do. I'm not playing around here, guys. I'm not going to pretend like this guy isn't exactly what he is demonstrating he is to the entire world. If you've been fooled by Trump up to this point, I pity you. I feel sorry for you. I see your comments, and I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to shut up. This man is a fascist. He is a threat to the entire democratic world. The only thing saving us is that he's so stupid and incompetent, and he's not going to pull it off. We are going to defeat him, and we're going to defeat the Russians. So what would be a real response if America had a real president? A real response to Russia's escalation of terrorist attacks would be a new military assistance package including long-range fires and air defense interceptors, sanctions on all Russian banks and their entire shadow fleet, and transferring all Russian assets held in the West to be used by Ukraine to defeat the Russians. This is what we should be doing, but we're not. So we need Ukraine to continue going after those refineries because we need Russia to economically collapse. It's the only way to make this war stop. There is no political solution. And China is trying to save Russia. China eyes panda bond fundraising for Russian energy companies. China is preparing to allow Russian energy companies to issue yuan-denominated bonds on its domestic market for the first time since 2017. What does this mean? It means that Russian energy companies can issue debt in China, and Chinese citizens, Chinese companies, the Chinese government can buy those bonds. Now, how this works with companies is when a company gets bankrupted, the shareholders are wiped out. Shareholder value goes to zero, and the bondholders become the new equity holders. This is, in America, we call it Chapter 11 or Chapter 9 bankruptcy. I forget which is one. I don't know how it works in Russia, but I imagine it's the same. What this means is if Russian companies go bankrupt and China is holding the corporate bonds, China then takes control ownership of these companies when there's a restructuring. So ultimately, I think that's Xi's plan. We'll go ahead and issue debt to the Russians, and if they fail, then we'll take their companies. We'll take their mines. We'll take their oil fields. We'll take everything, corporation-wise. Now, if Russia says, you can't take our companies, we're not going to respect the debt, well, then that would be some tension between these two countries. This is interesting. Shell agrees to a 10-year gas supply deal with Hungary. This is Hungary's foreign minister making the announcement. I'm going to read this. The contract has a duration of 10 years starting in 2026. This contract will supply us with 2 billion cubic meters of gas over the 10-year period. It strengthens the safety of the energy supply, providing this a new source, a new contract, and a new route at the same time. This is genuine diversification, which does not replace existing sources but adds a new one to those already available. It was within Hungary's power 3 years ago to diversify and get off Russian gas, Russian oil. But because Ukraine first on January 1st shut down one of the pipelines, and now they're continuously blowing up the other pipeline, Hungary is forced to find alternative energy solutions, and they signed a contract with Shell. Hungary was always capable of doing this. They just didn't want to. CEO of Russian fertilizer firm found decapitated near Kaliningrad. This is yet another Russian oligarch, a billionaire. He might not have quite been a billionaire, but he was pretty wealthy. But we get to check my second favorite Wikipedia page of all time, suspicious Russia-related deaths since 2022. And this is the complete list of all of the Russian business leaders and politicians who have suspiciously died in the last 3.5 years. A lot of people being strangled, a lot of people falling out windows, a lot of people being poisoned, suspicious conditions. So this fertilizer company CEO, his head was cut off, and I imagine the FSB is going to rule this a suicide. Because, of course, if you plan to kill yourself, you would choose to cut your own head off. So here we go, the CEO of Potash, Alexei Sinizia, he was found decapitated under a bridge in Kaliningrad. There will be no follow-up. Russian pro-war blogger accused of laundering money meant for soldiers. This just makes me happy. This is the Russian military blogger Roman Alecki, and he was caught on video basically confessing to stealing money meant to be benefiting soldiers. So he runs blogs that then ask for fundraising donations. He then just steals the money. And on camera, he admitted how he does this. So he would launder a 200 million ruble donation through this business to buy medical supplies. The paperwork would be forged. He would keep 50 million rubles for himself. This is really upsets the pro-Z community in Russia because how do you know? When you donate money to somebody, how do you know they're not stealing it? This is why I never touch or handle anything, guys. When you make a donation, I always say send it to the person or the company, but I never want to touch the money, guys. I just don't want there to be any accusations or suspicion. Either way, I'm going to thank this guy for being corrupt and for undermining the Russian military effort and demoralizing people who donate and volunteer for the Russian military. Go team. Team corruption. One piece of good news, the European Union announced a 7 billion drone alliance with Ukraine. Lots of these kinds of announcements the last 1.5 years, so fantastic. Let's make it rain fire in Russia. Final video is once again from friend of the channel, Zarina Zabriskie. She is risking her life every day by remaining in the city of Kherson, but she feels compelled to get these reports out. And the Russians once again bombed the main marketplace in the city of Kherson, and I just want to share the video showing the devastation.
I'm at the central market in Kherson. Overnight it was hit with what seems to be 4 artillery shells. And the attack is continuing now as people are cleaning and trying to salvage whatever is left. Not much is left at this part. It's not the first time that it's been hit, but last night there was a massive fire destroying a lot of stores.
Це мій магазин, да. І був обстріл. 4 було в прильотах і от згоріло все. Це все, що було, да. В мене квартира теж прилетів кап, розруйнована квартира. Оце все, що було у мене, де я заробляла на хліб. Чоловік у мене військовий служить на Донеччині в Краматорську. Як виживати?
I personally was shopping here for vegetables and fruit, and there were zero military significance in this object. They sold sour cream, cottage cheese, shoes, toys. The post-apocalyptic scenes of what used to be utensils.
Так, це було наше. Нічого не було. Прожектора, скільки було. Чайники, книжки, нічого не було. Бачите, що? Люстри, світильники, електротовари, плитки. Так, я себе сколько тут денег и покипятили.
Continue supporting Ukraine. Russia will be defeated. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.